Over time, this approach builds a kind of quiet confidence. You become less reactive, less fragile, less desperate for emotional resolution in every moment. You begin to trust yourself to feel fully and respond wisely. You no longer need to fear your emotions because you've developed the strength to handle them with grace. You learn to let your emotions inform you, but not control you. Understanding that emotions are messengers, not masters, is a turning point in emotional detachment. It allows you to reclaim your sense of self from the sway of momentary feelings. It creates inner stability that isn't shaken every time something external shifts. And perhaps most importantly, it gives you the freedom to move through life with awareness, compassion, and choice rather than being pulled by every emotional current you encounter. Respond more calmly, and make decisions from a place of clarity rather than chaos. You are no longer at the mercy of emotional waves. You learn how to ride them without being drowned by them. It's also important to recognize that emotions are temporary. They ebb and flow. They rise and fall. The feelings that seem all-consuming in the moment often pass with time, especially when you don't resist them or fuel them with rumination. Emotional detachment teaches you to sit with discomfort rather than fight it or flee from it. And in doing so, you build emotional endurance. You start to realize that you can feel hard things and still be okay. That you can experience emotional intensity without being defined or destroyed by it. Instead, emotional detachment asks you to become the observer, to pause, to ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me, rather than immediately acting from it. This perspective creates space between feeling and reaction. That space is where your power lies. In that space, you can feel overwhelmed and still choose not to speak harshly. You can feel rejected and still choose not to beg for validation. You can feel anxious and still decide not to escape into unhealthy coping mechanisms. This is not emotional avoidance, it is emotional mastery. It's the ability to honor your emotions without being enslaved by them. Many people are afraid that detaching from their emotions means becoming cold or numb, but the opposite is true. When you are no longer consumed by emotional storms, you become more grounded, more present, and actually more empathetic. You can listen more deeply. One of the most profound steps toward emotional detachment is learning to shift your relationship with your emotions. Too often, people believe that what they feel is who they are, or that they must act immediately on intense emotions to find relief. But emotions, while powerful and deeply human, are not facts. You begin to trust your own definitions of your identity, healing, and your own ability to messenger signals trying to tell you something about your internal experience or your environment. Ultimately, the most powerful form of closure doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing. It's when you decide that your healing is more important to understanding someone else better. There is incredible strength when you take back that every emotion has a purpose, and that's okay. Person, anger might choose to release this, and you return it. This kind of detachment is not emotional detachment. It's recognizing anxiety is not alerting you. It means acknowledging that some people do not have the capacity to automatically stop moving the story to end, sad or spiraling, and start realizing that the behavior of others often has more to do with their own wounds rather than being consumed by what could have been. Letting go of closure is one of the most difficult yet powerful acts of emotional detachment. Some chapters as human beings we are wired to some people explanation without giving. We want things to make sense. We want to know why someone left, why something ended, also why we weren't enough, kind of freedom, why things didn't turn out the way we hoped. Space for someone else's closure feels like it will bring peace. Like you no longer need to keep reopening a wound just to understand why it move on. But in many situations, closure never comes, or if it does, it's incomplete, unsatisfying, or comes far too late. The truth is, the need for closure often keeps you emotionally tethered to situations that are already over. You wait for an apology that may never come, for a message that remains unread, or for someone to suddenly offer the explanation that will ease your pain. This waiting becomes a quiet form of suffering. It keeps you stuck in a state of emotional limbo. Over time, as you affirm your worth from within, the opinions of others begin to lose their power. You can receive feedback without being crushed by it. You can handle rejection without questioning your value. You can witness someone's disapproval without automatically assuming you've done something wrong. This emotional independence allows you to be fully present, fully yourself, and fully free. When your self-worth no longer fluctuates with the ever-changing tides of external validation, emotional detachment becomes second nature. You are no longer driven by fear of disconnection, because you are already connected to yourself, your truth, and your inner peace. And from that place, you can engage with the world not from a place of needing approval, but from a place of authentic confidence and calm. To begin detaching from external validation, you must start by getting honest with yourself. Ask questions like, would I still do this if no one noticed or applauded? Am I living by my values or by someone else's expectations? The answers may feel uncomfortable at first, but they are essential for growth. Rebuilding your self-worth means choosing to honor your own feelings, even when they're not popular, standing by your boundaries, even when they're not understood, and trusting your intuition, even when it's challenged. This shift also involves embracing imperfection. When your worth is rooted internally, you no longer need to perform or please to feel good enough. You allow yourself to make mistakes, to be misunderstood, to walk away from what doesn't serve you without spiraling into guilt or shame. You become more resilient because you're not constantly scanning the world for signs that you're okay. You already know that you are. The truth is, people are inconsistent. Their opinions are influenced by their own emotions, insecurities, and biases. Building your identity on such an unstable foundation leads to insecurity and emotional exhaustion. Many people don't realize how much of their behavior is driven by the need for external validation. It can show up subtly over-explaining yourself to avoid being misunderstood, posting on social media for approval, agreeing when you want to say no, or overachieving because you're afraid of being seen as inadequate. These behaviors, while seemingly harmless on the surface, slowly erode your authenticity and create emotional dependency. You become disconnected from your own voice, your own needs, and your own truth. One of the deepest emotional entanglements people experience comes from tying their self-worth to how others perceive them. This attachment to approval, praise, or acceptance can silently govern your decisions, shape your personality, and trap you in a cycle of constantly seeking reassurance. Emotional detachment becomes nearly impossible when your sense of value is placed in the hands of others, because every reaction, opinion, or rejection becomes a threat to your inner stillas. Detaching your self-worth from external validation requires a fundamental mindset shift, moving from being outwardly defined to inwardly grounded. This means recognizing that who you are is not determined by someone else's response, attention, or affection. It's about learning to validate your own experience, to affirm your choices, and to believe in your inherent worth without needing it to be echoed by those around you. There will be times when people disappoint you, when relationships shift, when things don't go according to plan. In those moments, emotional detachment becomes a form of emotional intelligence. You realize that clinging tighter doesn't give you more control, it just drains your energy and clouds your perspective. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've decided to care about yourself enough not to be consumed by what you cannot change. Accepting what you cannot control is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's a quiet, internal choice to loosen your grip, to breathe through discomfort, and to allow life to unfold without needing to micromanage every outcome. Over time, this practice builds emotional resilience. You become less reactive, more at peace, and more grounded. You begin to trust that no matter what happens around you, you have the strength to remain calm within. When you accept what you cannot control, you begin to redirect your energy inward. Instead of trying to fix someone else's emotions, you begin to manage your reactions. Instead of obsessing over how a situation will unfold, you focus on how you will carry yourself through it. This shift frees up enormous mental and emotional space. You stop chasing explanations and start choosing peace. You stop demanding closure and learn to create your own. This kind of acceptance requires trust in yourself, in your capacity to cope, and in the idea that not knowing what's next doesn't mean you're unsafe. It also requires compassion. Sometimes we hold on because we believe we can prevent pain, either our own or someone else's. But trying to protect others from their own emotional path or shield yourself from all discomfort only leads to more suffering. Acceptance invites you to feel what you feel without trying to edit or escape it, and then to let go with grace. One of the most liberating yet difficult truths to embrace is that not everything in life is within our control. This includes how others think, feel, or behave. It includes outcomes, timing, and even certain aspects of ourselves that are shaped by past experiences or circumstances beyond our influence. Emotional detachment begins to take root when we fully accept this reality not as a resignation, but as a powerful shift in how we engage with the world. Much of emotional suffering comes from resistance. We want people to change. We want closure, justice, certainty, or assurance that things will unfold the way we hope. But the more we cling to these desires, the more we remain emotionally entangled in frustration, disappointment, and as you keep choosing yourself not in acceptance is not about giving up on your desires or becoming passive. It's about understanding where your responsibility ends. You're no longer clinging to people or outcomes to feel okay. You're grounded in your own presence, supported by your own care, and inspired by your own growth. The more you invest in your inner world, the less dependent you become on the outer one. You learn to navigate life with emotional clarity because your sense of worth is no longer tied to chaos, conflict, or approval. You become emotionally self-sufficient, not closed off, but centered, not distant, but discerning. Prioritizing self-care and inner growth transforms emotional detachment from a defense mechanism into a way of life, a life rooted in peace, authenticity, and strength. Inner growth complements self-care by encouraging you to evolve beyond old patterns and limiting beliefs. Growth means being willing to confront uncomfortable truths, to ask hard questions like, why do I feel the need to fix everyone? Or why do I tolerate what makes me feel small? It's about being honest with yourself, even when the truth requires change. Inner growth involves learning how to let go of guilt, of unrealistic expectations, of people who drain you, and of habits that sabotage your peace. It's about rising above emotional survival and stepping into emotional maturity. Both self-care and inner growth involve making intentional choices. You choose to spend less time in toxic environments. Prioritizing self-care and inner growth is not just about indulgence or occasional relaxation. It is a deliberate, ongoing practice of nurturing your well-being so that you can maintain emotional balance and resilience. When you're constantly giving to others, responding to external stress, or trying to manage the emotional chaos around you, it becomes very easy to forget yourself in the process. Emotional detachment requires strength, and that strength comes from a deep, consistent commitment to caring for your mind, body, and spirit. Self-care starts with recognizing that your needs are valid not just when you're burned out or on the verge of a breakdown, but every single day. It means giving yourself permission to rest, to disconnect from negativity, and to spend time doing things that replenish your energy rather than drain it. This could be as simple as taking a walk in nature. You can let people have their moods and opinions without it shaking your sense of self. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without clinging. Mindfulness gives you the strength to witness emotion without becoming it, and self-awareness gives you the wisdom to learn from what you feel rather than being ruled by it. Through regular practice, even just a few moments a day, mindfulness becomes a refuge. In that stillness, you reconnect with yourself, and you remember that your peace is not tied to how others behave, but to how you choose to respond. This is the foundation of emotional detachment. Meditation, reading something that inspires you, or surrounding yourself with freedom to feel without being owned by your feelings. These small mindfulness also teaches emotional regulation that protects you from emotional overexposure. You begin to see that feelings are not facts, they're temporary states. When you prioritize self-care, they rise, you begin to develop emotional independence. Just because you feel hurt, you stop relying on external validation to feel worthy. Just because you feel anxious, you start cultivating something terrible is going to happen. This shift is essential to emotional detachment, clouds in the sky rather than storms that define your entire reality. Avoid rejection or fulfill roles that were never truly ours. Detachment is built upon the ability to stay grounded even when emotions are intense. Rather than obligation, you over time, mindfulness changes the way you interact with yourself and the world. My peace matters. It makes you less reactive, more thoughtful, and more compassionate both toward yourself and others. You no longer feel the need to control everything or everyone. Self-awareness goes hand in hand with mindfulness. It's the deeper process of understanding why you feel what you feel and how those feelings influence your behavior. It requires honest reflection. Maybe you realize you get defensive when criticized because you grew up in an environment where mistakes weren't allowed. Mindfulness and self-awareness are powerful tools that you feel emotionally exhausted after certain conversations to observe your thoughts, because you tend to take responsibility for other people's feelings. These insights are not meant to blame or shame, they're unconscious reactions we feel triggered, overwhelmed, patterns, the more choice you have in how you respond to them. These reactions may come from old wounds, insecurities, or deeply ingrained beliefs that we've never fully explored. Without awareness, we become trapped in those emotions, unable to see clearly or make choices that align with our true intentions. Mindfulness creates a pause, a space between stimulus and response, where clarity and calm can emerge. Holding firm, even when it's uncomfortable, is part of reclaiming your emotional autonomy. You don't need to justify your boundaries excessively. A simple "this doesn't work for me" is enough. Your well-being is reason enough. Learning to set and maintain boundaries is a skill that gets easier with practice. Each time you say no without guilt, each time you prioritize your needs without apology, you reinforce the message that your emotional health matters. Boundaries allow you to stay connected to others without losing yourself. They are not walls that keep people out. They are guidelines that ensure your emotional home stays safe and peaceful. Boundaries can take many forms. They can be physical, like needing personal space; emotional, like choosing not to engage in certain conversations; or mental, like protecting your peace by limiting exposure to negative influences. For example, you may need to tell a friend that while you care about them, you're not in a place to absorb their drama every day. Practicing mindfulness doesn't require you to sit in silence for hours, or you might let a family member know that you're not available to talk late at night because it disrupts your sleep. It simply means these decisions are not present with what you are feeling, acts of self-care and experiencing without judgment. It's also important to remember that it's about noticing when your mind is spiraling into overthinking. It's not enough when your body is tightening and hope others respect them, or when your emotions are being triggered by something outside of your control, especially if they're used to you always being available. Instead of reacting impulsively or drowning in emotion, your emotional well-being, mindfulness teaches you to step back and observe. Clearly and kindly, I'm feeling anxious. Boundaries help build trust and mutual understanding in relationships rather than eroding them. The first small act of acknowledging boundaries is identifying where they help you regain control. You may notice feelings of resentment, exhaustion, or anxiety in certain situations or around certain people. These emotions are signals that your boundaries are being crossed or not enforced. Maybe you feel obligated to answer every message right away, even when you're mentally drained. Maybe you find yourself constantly listening to someone's complaints or problems while your own emotional needs go unheard. These are moments that call for a reset. Setting healthy boundaries is a critical part of emotional detachment because it allows you to define where you end and others begin. Without boundaries, it becomes almost impossible to maintain emotional clarity. You absorb other people's moods, carry their problems as your own, and feel guilty for saying no even when your own needs are being ignored. Boundaries are not about being harsh or indifferent. They are about protecting your emotional space so that you can show up as your best self, calm, centered, and grounded. Many people struggle with setting boundaries because they fear conflict, rejection, or being perceived as selfish. But the truth is, boundaries are an act of respect not just for yourself, but also for others. They communicate that you value your time, your energy. Recognizing toxic patterns doesn't mean blaming yourself. It means you may obsess over how others feel about you. It means you're no longer willing to let outdated emotional habits define your present or your peace of mind. These patterns don't just drain energy, they shape your identity in ways that pause, reflect, and choose a different way of responding, one that aligns with your growth, not your past wounds. A common and damaging pattern is personalizing everything. That's the foundation of emotional detachment. If someone is upset, you assume it's your fault. To see clearly and act wisely. If someone withdraws, you wonder what you did wrong. This constant self-questioning creates anxiety and emotional instability. Another pattern is people-pleasing, trying so hard to make others happy that you end up ignoring your own needs and over time building resentment. When these tendencies go unchecked, they become habits that keep you emotionally entangled in every interaction, often at your own expense. Another toxic pattern is emotional reactivity, the habit of instantly reacting with anger, sadness, or fear before understanding the full situation. At its core, emotional detachment is not about withdrawing love or care. It's about recognizing that your well-being does not have to depend on the emotional states of others. You can still be compassionate and empathetic. Recognizing without absorbing everyone's patterns is one of the most essential steps to this kind of reactionary behavior cannot change. Emotional detachment gives you the emotional freedom. Many of us go through life lash out, shut down, or spiral into overthinking. By truly understanding relationships, emotional reactivity not only creates these patterns, also traps you in cycles of unconsciously influencing how we maintain strong, healthy relationships. Breaking these patterns starts. It is not about caring less. It means observing your emotional patterns show up when we are overly attached. We often take overthinking, internalizing. For example, if you always feel the need to always apologize, we tie our happiness to other people's behavior or external. Is it because you're afraid of being misunderstood? This constant emotional fluctuation is exhausting and unsustainable. When you recognize these patterns, emotional detachment helps strategies for coping with discomfort. It teaches us to remain grounded and calm, even when the world around us feels chaotic. It's also important to understand that emotional detachment is a form of self-respect. It means you value your peace of mind enough to protect it. It's a commitment to not let temporary emotions dictate permanent actions. It gives you the strength to pause before reacting, to evaluate a situation from a place of logic rather than from a whirlwind of feeling. You stop chasing validation, stop overanalyzing every word, and begin to see things more objectively. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. Many associate it with being cold, distant, or uncaring. But true emotional detachment is none of those things. It is not about building walls around your heart or cutting yourself off from human connection. Instead, it is about creating space for clarity, stability, and self-preservation. When we become too entangled in our emotions, especially those that stem from relationships, work stress, or past trauma, we begin to lose perspective. Our reactions become automatic, our judgment clouded, and our inner peace compromised. Understanding the purpose of emotional detachment starts with recognizing the difference between reacting emotionally and responding mindfully.